Hello, and welcome to the Webinar Talk Show. I'm Elise Green.
And I'm Tom Singer, and we are so glad that you've joined us here for another episode of this program that we created because we believe a couple of things. In this crazy world that we've been in the last 6 or 7 months, we know that the events industry, there's just so many questions and it's so hard. And we believe in one thing, and that is don't cancel your event. There are so many ways to take it into the virtual world, the hybrid world, and Eliz and I are committed to bringing great interviews with people who can help you do just that, because we believe that webinars and other presentations should be and can be better than a talking head over PowerPoint.
Absolutely. And we have someone as a guest who we're pretty lucky to get her because she has been busy.
Yes.
Very, very busy serving her clients, helping them do that shift into the virtual world from in person. And she's really an expert on leadership, going from training student leaders all the way through working with leaders of organizations. So that piece, we can't stop training.
No, we still need to train our leaders.
We can't stop doing that just because we have a pandemic. And she's come up with some really innovative ways to serve her clients to continue that training, even though we can't be physically together.
So plus the education market, the colleges and the fraternities and sororities and the other groups that make up that whole world of education, they're struggling right now and they need to have great programs.
They absolutely do. So let's bring on our guest, Patty Hendrickson. Woo!
Hello. Good morning.
Welcome, Patty.
What I should have said is that Patty is a member of NSA, as we all are, but also the Wisconsin chapter of the National Speakers Association, and is often my partner in crime when planning fun events. So if you get Patty and I in a room together, the enthusiasm level is pretty high.
Yeah, I would imagine being part of the Wisconsin chapter and getting around the two of you means that you will get voluntold to do something.
Oh, you are so right, Tom. Yes, you should come to the Wisconsin chapter, Tom. I'm just saying.
You never know. You never know.
It's fantastic. It's fantastic.
Well, but that's part of good leadership. Look at that segue. Is really bringing in and supporting the talent of the people around you. Do you think people need leadership training now more or less than they did before COVID hit?
Undoubtedly more. Undoubtedly. Every pre-con event I have with a client, we talk first a little bit about everybody needs to pause. It's okay to feel crummy. I mean, whatever the thing that pushed you over the top, pause. But too many people have paused and they've stalled. They don't know where to go, so it just is too comfortable to be in that same spot. And this is not serving anybody. We pause, breathe, go. Any movement makes momentum, so start somewhere. And that's where my whole first initial March 20th outreach was. I was just feeling so sad for all of these fabulous events that weren't happening. I'm like, what do I do? I did not know. So one day, I think I sent out like 200 emails. I'm not selling. What can I do? What can I do? And one of my clients, she said, Patty, 13 minutes ago, I was supposed to start my state conference, which would have had over 2,800 people. There's nothing. People are sad. Just do something. So we made these little videos and they loved them and they got seen tons. So more and more people kept asking. So pretty soon, my hubby's filling me in the little creative studio we have behind me. And we were just sending these off nonstop all day long. But it was something. And we didn't talk about the event they didn't have. We talked about all the pieces that they'd done throughout the year to get that set up. So it was remembering good things. And it gave a group of people to come together and talk about, yeah, I love you. Let's do this. Come on. So let's not stop. So that's how it started.
So Patty, you've worked both in that education education market and in the corporate and association market. Let's talk for a minute about colleges and high schools and Greek organizations and stuff, who that's a big part of the meetings world. Sometimes people don't think about that, but that is a big part of the meeting and the training world. How have they been affected with everything that's gone on in COVID, and what can we learn from how they've handled that?
Well, that word pivot, they've had to do. 60% of my clientele, I need to preface this so people understand, 60% of my calendar is held for my student associations. I work extensively with what's called CTSOs, Career and Technical Student Organizations. That's the FFA, DECA, FBLA, PBL, HOSA, all those groups, Skills USA. And all of those groups have summer leadership training, and I usually focus on their state leaders and their regional leaders. The summer training, they all have a fall come together meeting, they all have a state conference, and they all have a national. So if you're a student, you go to at least 4 events physically throughout the year. Well, when this went and no school is going to let anybody go anywhere, it evaporated. It just went away. And so we had to come up with something, to do for it. And the Greek organizations also, most of them have the Greek fraternities and sororities. I work with their leadership quite extensively too. Most of them have every 2 years their biennial convention. And this year, of the 26 women groups, where each one of those bring, 1,000 to 2,000 folks together, it couldn't happen. So it just went away. And again, they needed something. So they've all made things happen online. And some of them are setting the bar for how to do it right, without a doubt.
So what are you seeing? When you say they're setting the bar, what are you seeing differentiating something that is outstanding as opposed to something that is just kind of taking the place of what would have happened?
Well, this also, when I started doing things this summer, I said I had 16 groups that I should have been with this summer training their state teams. Mm-hmm. And, we stepped back and thought, okay, how do we do this? And I just put whiteboard out and I just started writing down, what do they need? What are the things they need? They can't be together. And from all of this collection of ideas or things that we do, but we have to do differently, I came up with a model that we could do online. So all of those that we were supposed to do live, we said, here's a proposal. I'll produce and facilitate. And I am not a techie person at all. I don't really ever use a PowerPoint ever before this. But this is what I have to offer. And so many of my clients said, great, let's do this. Let's do this. And then I reached out to a couple other speaker friends. So most of the time we'd have 3 people on, and one person was a speaker in the moment, the other person, the producer, and the other person was given the vacationer status. So when we storyboarded up the day, we all would have a role. So there was at least some time where you were not thinking, which was those of us who do virtual, you need a time where you're not thinking. And It worked great. And the beauty of that is, particularly for some of those smaller organizations, they could have not afforded to fly 3 of us in ever for 2 or 3 days to do this. And they had it. And another perk too, and I do these state officer summit launches, I call them, and it's just randomly. You can be in any one of the 10 organizations that are under the CTSO umbrella, as long as you're a state or national officer. You usually have anywhere from 12 to 60 people on, and it's really fun. But a couple of weeks ago, I had a team from West Virginia, a team from Montana, and a team from Alaska. There's no way those 3 groups and I would ever have been together in shared space. And throughout the entire call, people just kept mentioning, this is so awesome. And it was just fun. I like what I do.
We can tell. I think that's great. I always like it when people have passion for what they do. So working with a lot of student leaders in those college-related organizations, what are you seeing from college students about their resiliency from this pandemic? I happen to know I have a college freshman. Eliz has 2 college sophomores off on campuses around the country. Some kids are doing well. Some are struggling a little more. What are you seeing in general with the student leaders?
With my clients, it's they don't know what to do because every campus is different. Mm-hmm. So what I've recommended, and we've done in a few cases, is we've always had events where they can come to just create a campfire where there's opportunity to talk. That the breakout room function of Zoom is the best gift to this planet for our young leaders. And personally, I've been a chapter advisor for an Alpha Phi chapter on my local campus for 30 plus years. And I see my women, they're still doing the things they need to do, but they've had to tweak their focus. People aren't going to pay the same amount when it's 100% virtual in that scenario. So they've taken, look at their budget and pulled out the things that they need and what they don't, and then shared back with the membership. Well, this is what it looks like this year. And I think some of our national organizations are doing the same thing. Some of the organizations, instead of charging dues per person, have now focused on, for a school or a campus, you'll have one dues payment for everybody, regardless of how many people are part, which is smart on their part, because if we don't keep members functioning and active, what's going to happen in 2 years? The majority of the people who belong won't remember how fabulous it was. They'll just remember the work it took through this. And we need to keep focusing on those people who remember what it was like.
I think that is a major takeaway for anybody who's running a membership organization, whether it's, as you're talking about, or an association. And there's lots of nonprofits at this point that are having the same experience, where how are you going to be remembered through this time is going to predict the future of the organization.
Undoubtedly, yeah, and it's harder to make that call to ask for money. My husband's a former chair of the United Way campaign, and it's just been hard. It's been really hard, but people are making it work. And what's nice is I've seen so many spaces where people are going, "This is what we're thinking. Let's have a conversation." So it's another excuse to bring people together and make there's got to be member value, and the more times we give member value, the better it is. At NSA, I've been a member since the 90s, a long time. This year is the best year ever. I feel like I have gotten sevenfold return on my investment. I'm just so proud of this organization.
Well, and you're right. Some organizations, whether it's a membership organization or even a company, some have done such a good job of letting their constituencies, their people, know that they care, and to provide tools, whatever those are, whether they're personal, whether they're business, whether they're just support. And other groups, well, let's just say other groups have not done as well. I tend to work a lot with law firms, and it's fascinating in doing training for some firms. Some of them feel very supported by their management, and some of them are like, what do I do with my career? Can I talk to you offline? And they're just horrified as far as what's going on. And you would think that within an industry, it would be similar from firm to firm. Mm-hmm. And it's everywhere from great to horrible, and you have no idea up front if it's going to be that way. So are you seeing that with the individual colleges and then these individual chapters of organizations on campuses? Some are doing great, and some are like just all over the map?
Yeah, you're spot on, Tom. And the hard part is it's harder to reach those folks virtually who have stalled because they're just sad and they're focusing on that bad element that's happening. And if they're not willing to take the hook of hope from you, it's not going to happen, and they'll just stay where they are. And that's just a challenge for so many of them. However, what we've been working really hard, any program we're doing is we're cherry picking 2 or 3 years ago from some of their stellar leaders that people still remember, like, oh, that person was a phenomenal president, or, oh, they were such a good state, whatever it was. And we invite them back to talk about something that was their greatest takeaway from the organization. So we're planting the seed, that weaving that thread through the mosaic of goodness, letting that person shine, but remembering people of why they felt so good about it a year or two ago. And that is helpful because they're authentic. You and I, we can speak as an outside person and, oh, it's fabulous. No, we haven't lived it. If you have somebody with a product of the program and they share it, hands down, that's what you should do.
I love the language that you're using, the hook of hope and the mosaic of goodness. I mean, first of all, that's completely on brand for you.
Kind of.
Completely. it is, I think, the reason for membership organizations to continue to have those events, because people do need that goodness. They do need that hope. They need to be brought out of that sort of, I'm going to sit here and I can sort of sit here and it's, but I'm not moving, I'm not growing, and I'm not leading. I think that is really smart. How do you get someone who may be a little hesitant working with a client? They're like, I don't know if we want to make this move. Maybe they're comfortable in that pause. How do you get them to move from the pause into the action of bringing their event into the virtual world?
Well, I always have a few little links that I leave open to my phantom friends that if they're on the fence of, I don't know if we can do this, Patty. We usually have, 1,800 people at our fall conference. Can we even get 100? I'm like, stop it. And then they sit on the sideline, not with their camera on, but they're hearing what's going on. And at the end of these events, actually, just last week I did 3 in a row. Thank God they were all on Mountain Time. I'm Central Time, so it's kind of nice. Next week I'm on the East Coast. I'm gonna die.
A little harder, yes.
But it's 8:30 to 3 in the afternoon is generally what we run those for, and they're hybrid. Some of the people are logging on and these are for student leaders. If their school is not in session, they're at home. Okay, so they're in their bedroom or wherever online, and then some schools are open, so they are what we call a shared experience. That group joins on one link, but then we do breakout rooms. We have modules that give them instructions of how they operate without joining a breakout room,
that's smart.
Oh, this is an animal. Let me tell you. It took me one time of not doing it right. a lot of coaching up front, a lot of coaching, and also coaching of, and this goes to their local leadership team to share with the general membership of, this is professionalism virtually. So it's more professionalism they're learning, which is part of what they are part of in this membership organization. So we're really spreading it as much as we can. But one of the good takeaways is we need to give those people that keep showing up what they need the most. Mm-hmm. A big piece in all of these organizations, the CTSO ones that I was sharing with and I work a lot with, a lot of their focus is competitive events that happen in like January, February, and in the spring. And you can compete in anything. I mean, there's kids who are making apps, or kids who they practice firefighting, literally with a giant hose. Yeah, crazy. So part of the fall conference is, because we know we want to plant the seeds, and this will give them something to work on that's attached to the organization to keep everybody involved. But a big focus is we created judges panels where we invite 3 of their judges that have been judges for 5-6 years to come in, and all the students are asking the chat box questions, and I'm moderating this, blah blah blah. And every time when we're done, people are saying, why didn't we do this before? This was awesome. I can't wait. And then when it's over, we don't just say, wasn't that great? Goodbye. 3 days later, we give to the leadership team, okay, here's your next steps. First thing, the handout that you got before to follow along in this conference, your chapter is going to meet and have a chapter meeting, and you're all going to talk about the elements. So it stays alive and they actually learn. And then the other piece is the next meeting after that should be, let's focus on who's going to do what competitive events and how are we going to get this started. So we're giving them things, instruction, because they could have been stalled, and we're helping the person, their advisor, the educator in charge, giving them that person content because they're exhausted. They don't know how to virtually teach people. So we're giving it to their officers and they're making work. And our response has been phenomenal. I'm exhausted.
So Patty, you talked about a lot of things there, but there's one thing I want to go back to that I think is genius, whether it's for student organizations or companies or trade associations. When we're doing hybrid events, that idea of having little pods of people who can safely gather in one place, like certain colleges that do have students on campus. And then when you do breakouts, letting those people do their breakout live. That just registered with me as like, because Eliz and I both have done a lot of hybrid style events. That's like, oh my gosh, that's like a boom.
Yeah.
Let's go a little deeper into that. How do you organize that to make sure that live group can do something and then the Zoom breakout group can do something all at the same time?
I am ready to take some notes.
2.5 weeks. Okay, 2.5 weeks before, we put a teaser, get ready, you're going to get your pre-event checklist of the 7 items you need to do before this to make it awesome. And then a week before, they get it. Okay. So we tease them a few times, and there's a little video we put in there too. And then it's explaining if you need to make certain that when we go to breakout rooms, you will not, oh wait, I should step back. And right when we come online for the Zoom, I have all the shared experiences rename themselves with an X before their name. So when I'm managing breakout rooms, I know X's don't go. I pluck them out.
That's the question I was curious about. That is genius.
And because, and I clearly say, you know, so many of those people at home are so jealous that you all can be together. But all you that are together, you're going to be jealous because you're not going to meet people from other schools. So there's give and take there. And also
that's
in the
great.
pre-event checklist too, I have them select one officer to be a chat box scribe. And I also instruct them to turn their camera so we can see the whole room. Most of them have a smart board somewhere in their auditorium in their room, but that way, because then we can see what it is. And most of the events, people come professionally dressed, conference attire. So it's nice to see that too. And something too that we started doing, I don't know, a couple of months ago. When we do registration, I have each of the educators who are in charge, the leader, whatever the group it is, to pick out one person who's their most stellar member. Could be an officer, could be not. Like, this is your champion of your chapter. Like, when anything's going down, they're there. The first to show up, the last to go away. And I get those from the client, and then I put them on a wheel, and we take officer spotlight moments at least 2 or 3 times throughout the day. And I spin the wheel, and they get instructions ahead of time. If you're picked, share your name, where you're from, what your career aspiration is, and something special about your chapter. So they're featured at this fall conference as a local leader. And then I'm reinforcing, I'm saying, everybody in the chat box, let's hear it up for Tatiana. Yay! She's one more person that's making a chapter work, even though we're in a pandemic. Everywhere you go when you show up. And sometimes when people step to the microphone, like, well, we only have 12 people in our chapter, you know, thinking that's so small. And then in the chat box, we're like, no, we've got 6, blah, blah. It's just this whole, it's robust conversation that you would not get if we were in a big conference room.
Right.
So
right.
There's so many perks to virtual. There are so many perks.
Well, we've talked a lot about that on this program, is that this experience is in many ways so much more intimate than you would ever have with a speaker or a guest, or even with each other if you were in a big ballroom or a conference center or wherever you would be. I really love the mechanics of having those pods. I like the word pod, working both with each other in person if they happen to be meeting there, or virtually if that's how they're meeting, makes so much sense. And it would be interesting to have feedback about, you know, how are those working differently now that, you know, when you come back and share out, how are those different in what's working? Because even when you get in that Zoom breakout room, there's a moment of like, oh, hey, hi, don't know you.
Oh, wait a minute. I give all those instructions ahead of time, though. I put up a screen that has them all. I have them take a picture of it. So there's no shared screen to take away the attention from people. They can look at their phone if they forget the instructions, and I give them an order of whoever's last name is first in the alphabet. So there's none of the clunkiness when you take it away. But I do say right up front that those with the X's, the shared experiences, they'll go faster. So when you're done, just chill out. If you got to run to the restroom, that's fine. But it'll take a few more minutes just because virtual's a little clunkier.
Sure.
So if everybody knows that, then it doesn't look like you don't know what you're doing. You've got to say it up front, or you don't look like you're in charge. The only mistake I have made that was like for me, I'm festering on and I need to get over it. I let the chat box go too long. Okay. This was a high school group, and this one group, it was obviously their educator had not read the checklist. And I made a few comments, and I said a few things, and I should have taken the chat box down, and I didn't. But I'm optimistic, and I keep praying that people will figure it out, or somebody would, nudge them. but that's the only negative that has happened so far for us. So, but I learned. I'm not going to let that happen again. And I'm going to preface a few things, sprinkle some other comments referring to what we did in the checklist. So if they didn't get it, they'll get it again.
So Patty, but before we let you go, I want to shift gears a little bit because you do work with so many high school and college student leaders. Living through this pandemic, I know I had a high school senior last year who's now a college freshman. It's been a rough time for the kids in that, let's, call it, teen to early 20s age bracket, because so many things that are so common when you're a high school senior or a college freshman or sophomore have sort of been taken away this year. And yet I tell my daughter all the time that her age group, it might make them stronger when they actually become leaders in our society. What do you think your clientele who you work with, what do you think they're going to walk away with stronger because of the pandemic?
Wow. Great question, Tom. And I do have a senior in high school who is a captain of his soccer team. And I saw him play for the first time last night. Anyway, woohoo. And they tied and it was a really good game. But anyway, yes, they are going to be always referred to, we have the 9/11 kids.
Mm-hmm.
They'll be the pandemic kids.
Mm-hmm.
And hands down, these students have found something to do about it. Like just yesterday, I was working with a team who usually when they show up, they have their beautiful uniforms on that they stand up, they do an opening session with. They don't get to do that. However, we found a way to mirror it, that we've got the same virtual background for them. They'll all be looking and it'll be edited together. So they will have that experience.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's a place where they can say, this is what we did. We couldn't do what was the normal, but we'll do this. And I always say to every state team I'm working with, you're going to be the best at this because you're the only one that had to do it. So don't worry about being graded against anybody else. You just do what you think is right, And this group too, we're not, the three of us in our age group, we're not always so good asking for help. This group will ask for help. Like, how do I do this? Mm-hmm. And whether it's, a quick text message or a call, it's help me. And that's not in my skill set always.
Yeah, well, I talk often about the curse of capability. When you can usually do things, it's very hard. You're unaccustomed to having to work to ask for help.
And Eliz, yes, I can see that all about Eliz Green. You do so many things awesome.
We speak about the things we know about. It is when you can't solve a problem, it is very difficult. When you're a capable person. So that's where a lot of us are living. I'm so glad that your clients have somebody to help them navigate this into the virtual world so they don't have to lose out on all of those wonderful traditions and training. So thank you. This has been awesome. If someone was saying to themselves, oh my goodness, I need to work with Patty Hendrickson, where would they find you?
They would just go to pattyhendrickson.com. And that's the best place to find me. And my email is Patty, and that's with a Y, Patty@pattyhendrickson.com. And anybody who's a speaker listening to this, reach out. I've got tons of modules, no need to rebuild. And it was interesting. I just worked with the Central Iowa chapter of PMI, and these are non-compensated board members who have busy jobs that are in total flux, and they manage projects. Mm-hmm. But every year they have to get their professional development credits. So this board said, well, let's try it. No clue what they were doing, did a whole thing virtual. At the end of this, they did 2 half days. Thursday was in the afternoon, Friday was in the morning. So it was like a day, but these still chunk between 2 days. At the very end, so many of their participants, and these are, competent, great professionals who love to manage and be a part of things. The chat box was full. We need to keep doing virtual every year. This was the best ever. Oh, all of them. And that client did not have to fly everybody in. They had amazing speakers and it was just done well. Mm-hmm. So do what you can. And whenever you're going, stop, pause, don't stall.
Well, thank you.
Don't
Thank you so much.
Fun.
Thank you so much for joining us here on the Webinar Talk Show. It's people like you who give our industry, of those who work in and around meetings and training, it's people like you who gives everybody hope. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Top of the head.
We have some fun and exciting things coming up. Tom, where would they find us if they wanted to find out more?
You can go to webinartalkshow.com and you can find all our information and many of our past episodes there. You also can join our Facebook page because that's where a lot of this stuff lives, and we'd love it if you like one of these episodes, share it with your friends.
Absolutely. Next week, we are going to be talking about how to do fundraising in the virtual world, and we're going to talk to someone from the world at work, talking about a number of events that they have shifted into the virtual world. Oh, can't wait. It's going to be great.
Yep.
So we'll see you next week on the Webinar Talk Show. Thanks for coming along.
Thanks, everybody.